So just quickly, a little bit about who we are and why we're here. CoDesign Studio is a not-for-profit social enterprise, but we operate as a fee-for-service consultancy. So other than just meaning that we have really arduous reporting requirements every financial year, what that means to you is that we work as consultants, just like any other consultants might, particularly for governments, but also landowners, helping them collaborate with the people that live and operate within their urban spaces and make better places. But because we're a not-for-profit, we're also eligible for grants. So we have a stream of work that we do that is directly for communities. And because we're eligible for these grants, we use them as a way to lead research into new practices and new ways of collaborating with citizens. We see that there are a lot of gaps in the way this is done at the moment, and so these grants provide us with an opportunity to test out new ideas and then importantly come up with tools and resources that we put on our website for everyone to use. So the problem that we're all about, our social mission, is about empowering people to shape their own neighbourhoods. That's at the heart of what we do. And we're a team of urban designers, landscape architects, recovering architects, town planners, theatre set designer, we've got a philosopher, a really mixed bag of people, but we've all come from sort of an urban development background and have a real passion for making great cities that people love to live in and feel connected to it. And so the problem that we're regularly trying to tackle is if you look at the three components of a city, you've got the authority, whether it be the local government or the state or the landowner, you've got the people that actually live in the city itself, and you've got the physical place. And the current dynamic with city making is that the onus is on the local government to ask the people what they want and tell them all about what they're going to get, and then do everything themselves. And in Australia, the way it works is there's a complete disconnect between what responsibility a citizen might have to actually change the place. So this doesn't mean it's always about community gardens and things like that, although they might be an important step. But it is about changing that paradigm from a main street of traders that complain to council about no one coming to their shops and saying it's because there's not enough car parking and it's because you're not putting up enough signage for us, and actually saying, well, perhaps you as traders could provide better footpath trading amenity and serve better coffee and things like that. Maybe that's the reason people aren't coming to your shops. We certainly don't phrase it in that way when we're speaking to them, but that's what we're all about, is looking at how citizens themselves can be part of the solution. So if you look at sort of an arbitrary before, historically, how cities were made, we all know Australia doesn't have places like this, but cities were much more incremental. There was a focus on streets and public spaces before the motor car. But the most important thing about this time is that cities were made by the citizens that live in them. And my grandfather was a school principal, and he had very much had a hand in funding and building the buildings within his school that he worked at. And for lots of important reasons, but also things that we can't change, this doesn't happen anymore. And now, development happens in large tracts of land. It happens much more quickly. Town planning is an industry that's controlled and regulated for important reasons, and things are delivered all at once. And while this has many benefits, it also means that citizens aren't actually part of that process anymore. And so what we do is when we want to come up with a solution for something as an industry, we go to our team of experts in the Collingwood office like this, and this guy comes up with a big idea for how he's going to fix the master plan, the silver bullet, whatever it might be that's going to fix this problem. It's probably a granite pedestrian mall or something like that. And then we take it to the community. And this guy turns up every time and says, I hate you, I hate this, there's dog poo on the footpath and not enough car parking. I don't care what you're here to talk to me about, but they're my issues. And the worst bit about this picture is that these people didn't turn up. And so it's the people that are not in the room are seen as being apathetic, that they don't care, that they're not interested, and that's certainly not the case. And we check the box of community engagement and say, okay, 5 people turned up, they're talking about something that's not relevant, we've told the community, what more can we do, we'll pop it on the website. And then things get written into a strategy. We know that many strategies aren't actually implemented. And of course, all the council officers here in the room will be familiar with these archive stores of reports and things like that are regularly just being renewed. And as an urban designer myself, I've written many bookcase-bound reports, many that have won awards, and nothing's actually implemented from them. This is the cycle that we're in. And every now and then things do get built, and we go through this process of fixing them and we call it placemaking. And as a placemaking consultancy, we get very frustrated with this dynamic. And we recently worked on a project with Vic Health, where Vic Health were providing money offering it to local Victorian councils to activate underutilised public spaces. And we were expecting most of the applications to be from looking at car parking spaces or vacant blocks of land, and they're the sorts of things they wanted to do something with. But actually, I think something like 80% of the applications came from councils that had brand new public spaces that nobody was using, and they wanted to come and fix them. And we see this all the time in the work that we do. And it's bonkers because we've spent millions of dollars for that granite, and then skaters just go through it and use it, and people are still unhappy and feel frustrated. And so what this is all about and how it relates to urban safety is there's a dynamic between inclusive spaces and designing inclusive public spaces and exclusive public spaces. I'll just unpack that a little bit further. We know that urbanisation across the world is growing. More and more people are living in cities, and particularly in Australia, it's a much higher percentage. But we know that by 2050, 80% of the global population will live in cities. So we're drawn to cities for jobs, for social networks, for affordability in some instances. It comes with it this togetherness, but people actually don't know each other the way that they used to. And so as Australian cities are getting denser, there's typically two ways that we're doing it. We're accommodating these people in buildings like this and in places like this. But at the same time as all this is happening and more people are moving to cities, things like loneliness are becoming increasingly problematic and becoming major causes of death even in our cities. And this statistic about loneliness being as likely to cause premature death as smoking or alcohol abuse is actually outrageous if you think about that as a statistic. And we know that we build neighbourhoods like this, and 1 in 3 Australians don't know their neighbour, don't know any neighbour in their local neighbourhood. Like, this is outrageous to me. I can't believe that this is actually the sort of city that we're creating now as we are getting denser and closer together. And Australia, 90% of us live in cities, and these are the places that we're creating. And so if you look at what the key to great places are, we say that it's twofold. One, it is the hardware, of course. It's the roads, it's the buildings, it's getting the height right, it's getting the square meterage of open space right. But perhaps even more importantly and often forgotten is what we call the software. It's the thing that makes it personal, it's a sense of place, it's the attachment, it's the identity, and all of that is highly nuanced and locally driven. And so if you think about that, hardware without software looks like this. It might be granite, might be award-winning, but it doesn't feel like the kind of place you want to be in. Software without hardware actually works surprisingly well. Of course, there's a lot of issues with this, but this is the kind of place you'd want to sit and hang out and meet people and watch the world go by. But of course, how do we get that balance? How do we get the hardware and the software as well? And this is what makes great places. And so if you think about those factors in the context of social inclusion, the Brotherhood of St Lawrence do a lot of really great work in their social exclusion monitor, and they talk about the factors that lead to social exclusion are a little bit about hardware, the quality of the neighbourhood itself, but they're primarily about volunteering, participation in decision-making, membership to clubs, things like that, and that is what software is. You don't get that stuff from master plans or planning schemes or building height regulations. You get that stuff from a whole different process. So when we're looking at what we're doing with crime, of course, CPTED is a really important part of designing out crime and thinking about how to passively reduce it, without even talking about CCTV and fencing and all that sort of stuff. We focus a lot on this, and I've got 14 years experience as an urban designer, and this is front and centre of most of the work I've done in public spaces. But what that does is it creates these really exclusive public spaces that are designed to, within an inch of their life, to stop certain types of behaviours and regulations. And the privatisation of public spaces through shopping centres and things like that is also problematic. And when there are so many rules like this, firstly, it's not the kind of place that you want to go to, but it's also not the kind of place that you, as a user, would feel a connection with and want to actually step in and help someone or really care much about what happens in that space at all. So the flip side of that, rather than designing out crime, what if we crowd it out? What if we just bring more people into spaces and use that as a deterrent for whether it be crime or even just improving the perceptions of safety? Inclusive public spaces look like this. This is a project we did last year in Brimbank City Council where we just shut down a central piece of road in central St Albans and invited the community to populate it. And there are big perceptions about crime and people feeling unsafe in that area. And it was really exciting to hear the question before from the MAV about mapping perceptions of safety and whether that's actually done or not. And we find in our work that's often the hardest thing to change, and the most important thing to try and track is how people feel in their neighbourhood and how they describe their neighbourhood to other people. And inclusive public spaces really help reduce the perception of being unsafe in certain areas. And in that way, they become self-governing. So that, if you're a bit of a social inclusion geek like I am, you might be aware of Gordon Allport's work from the 50s about contact theory. Academics at the time spent a lot of time during the desegregation era in the States looking at what happens when people actually mix with one another and getting people mixing up in schools and all sorts of things. And there's lots of positive things that happen when you bring people together. And the 4 requirements of people having social harmony in this theory is about equal status, intergroup cooperation, common goals, and support by institutional and local authorities. And that's actually very similar to what the Brotherhood of St Lawrence speaks about with the need for social inclusion, the things that you need to be providing. So how do we get there? It's all great to talk about, bringing people along on the journey and creating inclusive spaces, but we're here to talk about infrastructure and building things. So how do you do both at once? So we say that there's a way to make stronger, better places through co-creation, through changing the way we're designing and building them in the first place. The first example I'm going to give you is about re-loving forgotten places. This is from actually a Department of Justice community grant that we worked on a couple of years ago in the Brunswick area. And is anyone here from Moreland Council? Well, some of you still might know that Brunswick has the world's longest network of bluestone laneways. It's got 64 kilometres of bluestone laneways in the back streets. And there were big perceived safety issues in this area a number of years ago where tragically Jill Mayer was abducted and later murdered in one of these laneway spaces. And the community were putting a lot of pressure on the council to fix the places, to make them safer and put in CCTV, and you would have heard about it all over the news at the time. And a lot of this was really about this perceived safety issue. And so because there was no funding for this kind of stuff, council did all they could, which was asphalting over the spaces and cleaning off the graffiti and trying to ask the police to do more patrols. And some of the residents felt really upset that these beautiful historical things were being cleansed of their character and thought that they should actually be playing a role in the public realm and not just be turned into roads behind their houses. And so we worked with a number of local residents and traders in the area to look at speaking to the rest of the community about what they would want to do with those spaces to get their neighbours to use them and to make them more meaningful to them. So we just ran it over a number of workshops out in the space using a temporary prototyping model where we just went out with, it's just spray chalk, it's okay, and went out into the space and just looked at a rapid transformation with those neighbours. And the interesting thing about this photo is only 2 of those people were actually involved in the project to start with. And as soon as we got out there and started doing this thing, everybody was coming out of the buildings and walking past and saying, what are you doing here? What's this all about? I said, we want to improve the safety in this area. How do you feel about the neighbourhood? What do you think we should do? And so many more people started to sign up to the initiative and wanted to be part of it once we were actually out there doing it. And of course, we'd done letterbox drops beforehand and invited people to meetings, and none of that had worked. And so we ended up just running a number of these initiatives across a few weeks, and they got bigger and bigger in participation each time. And most of the things you can see in these photos are just provided by the people that were participating, and they wanted to run them as barbecues and get to know you events. And out of this, a whole lot of ideas came out of what they wanted to do in these spaces. And some of it was just artwork and nighttime lighting and using it as gardens. And as soon as the neighbours started to know each other, they started to share ideas and come up with initiatives they could do together. And this is, of course, it's Brunswick, so it's all the hipster traders came out with their free coffee. I don't even know what's in that shot glass. I only saw that on the photo the other day. It doesn't matter. But the traders and the business owners all got behind it, and they started to promote it as their initiative to their customers and their community as well. So it very quickly stopped being outsiders coming in to fix a place and actually the neighbours coming together to talk about how they would want this space to become. And so the most exciting initiative, and there are a number of different things, was that there was vacant land at the back of one of the properties, and the woman who wanted to redevelop it eventually said, this is just an eyesore at the moment and people dump rubbish into it now. And she met the people that operate the youth centre across the laneway, and they said, we'd love some more activity space. And so we ended up putting a fence in at the back of her property so that this vacant land was put into the laneway, and it's used as a community garden, and it still to this day is. And of course, if you're looking at a safety strategy for a laneway, putting vacant land into the laneway isn't something you'd put in a master plan. That, of course, is only something that's going to work once those neighbours come up with it together. And so now the youth centre, which were actually the source of this perceived safety issue with the loitering and all the things youths do, they now use that space, and they're the ones that run it and use it as a public space. And so what's actually happened with all these initiatives is somebody else unconnected to our project has put it on TripAdvisor, which is a really incredible barometer of whether your project is successful or not, if it actually feels like it's part of the community and people visit it. And this screenshot's from a little while ago, but it's got very good reviews, lots of comments on there, and lots of other little initiatives and other laneways have started coming up. We also got national press on it, which we thought must be a slow news week if we've just hung some lighting in a laneway. But, you know, we got a huge positive reception on our Facebook page when we did it, and we really learnt that so many communities out there want this opportunity and want the chance to meet their neighbours and come together and come up with something that they can build and make together. And what's happened since then is these neighbour groups have now turned into a formal group, and they meet every month and they have a dinner in that space every month. And every time a new person moves into the street, they get told about this laneway group and they all get invited along. And it's really taken on a life of its own now, almost 2 years later, that's chugging along with no funding anymore. We had $5,000, I think, to build this stuff. So it really wasn't about the funding, it was about facilitating that opportunity for people to meet together. And that perceived safety issue is gone in that space completely. And yeah, we did it in under $5,000 worth of materials and less than 90 days. It's success without a master plan. The second idea is about reframing problems as assets. So we've done some work out in Hepburnshire. Anyone here from Hepburnshire? Who is in the room today? Is anyone here from a council? And so Hepburnshire has a lot of problems in their youth community. There's a lot of attrition once kids are of working age to move to the major centres for jobs. Public transport's a big issue, and ice is, you know, like sadly in many of our regional communities, ice is a big issue in Hepburn. And so the council brought us on to help them speak to their youth about what they could do to engage the kids and give them things to do. And they normally just build skate parks that don't get used. And so what we did is there's one of the old ones, and then they build them like that, and they're still empty. And so what we did was went out and met with some of the kids, and it was very easy to generalise and say, oh, well, the kids all just want to leave and move to Melbourne or Geelong or Ballarat or somewhere, and they're not really interested in sticking around. But when we actually met with them and discussed what the issues are, we heard that they feel disengaged and unwelcome by their towns because they're geared towards tourists. And so those cafes, you know, don't want to give the Wi-Fi password out to the kids after school because they have the Devonshire tea crew coming in off the tour buses. And they actually feel very proud and excited to be part of these communities and don't want to leave, importantly. And so we went out into the schools and spoke to them all and thought, what we need here is them to start coming up with the ideas about their own community. So we ran, after much negotiation with the council, we ran an ideas competition that we opened up to the youth from 12 to 24 in that local area, and said there'll be 2 winners that will win $1,000 that they can put towards making their own idea happen. So come up with the idea, put it online, everyone gets to vote on it, and then if you are the most popular and it's feasible from a council perspective, you get $1,000 to help make your idea happen. So we went out and met as many people as we could and directed everyone onto this online website, and in 5 weeks we managed to get 300 entries into this competition. There was only an estimated 2,000 youth in that area. So to get that many entries, and of course there were some duplicates, and 1,800 votes on those ideas, and a real spread right across the municipality. And although initially council was worried about people continuing to ask for the heated pool that they kept asking for, the actual things that they wanted, and this is the winning idea, they wanted to run a movie day at the library, and he wanted the money for popcorn popcorn and beanbags. And the complaint is that although the library already runs movie days and the kids don't go, is that the library always runs Frozen and everyone's sick of watching Frozen, so they want to organise their own cool movies. And the other top things on the wish list were not even hard infrastructure. It was about social spaces to hang out, access to Wi-Fi in public spaces, and then jobs and transport. And many of those things didn't need infrastructure investment. They just needed, a few little tweaks to the policy or getting traders on board to allow kids to have, access to the Wi-Fi and things like that. And these kids are now implementing those ideas. And the third and final idea, just to wrap up, is about you can test risky ideas and build evidence about whether they're going to work or not by using a prototyping approach. We do this work a lot, temporary pop-up spaces, and it's not for the sake of having a cute pop-up. It's sort of unfortunate it's become trendy for us, but as a way to test ideas and see whether you should invest in the permanent infrastructure and whether it will change things. And one that is, I think, just coming out in the next few weeks near North Richmond Station off Victoria Street for City of Yarra is a new public plaza that they want to put in near the train station. There's a lot of real issues about drug dealing and drug abuse on Victoria Street, of course, as we all know. The community are really worried about a new public space and whether it will be used in that way or not. So the street's been shut down. We worked with some of the local youth group and council, went in there with pallets and turf and a whole lot of recycled stuff, painted the road. We used volunteers for our installs and transformed this space into a green space, and they're now working with the local traders to program it, because there's nowhere currently for the traders to host cooking days, or the Victoria Street Traders Group is the most interesting Vietnamese and Chinese community in Melbourne, and they want spaces like this, and so this is a great way to test whether that's actually going to work or not. And it is working, by the way. And so just quickly to conclude, I just want to leave you with this quote. When we're thinking about public spaces and how to make them safe, the biggest threat to these public spaces is actually that we're through exclusive design, through over-designing and regulating, we're risking excluding people from them, and they're no longer public at all. And I just want you to think about that when you're thinking about how to make better public spaces in your municipality.
I want to ask a question about parking, because inevitably in country towns, it's all about the parking. Do you have any evidence or aware of any studies that link prosperity to parking or vice versa?
We get asked that a lot. I know, I can tell you that. The short answer is no. We do a lot of work with with placemaking traffic consultants that deal exactly with that issue, and so they have, there is research out there, but it's such a highly localised issue. Whether it does actually how it turns back into revenue and things like that. We've recently done some work out in Geelong on Mallop Street, where they used to have angle parking right down that centre street, and big concerns from the traders that trade's always dropping and they need more parking in that centre. But Mallop Street actually has a huge amount of free parking within a very, very short radius of that area. And so what I would say, while I haven't come across studies that are actually helpful to be applied in other locations, is that using the testing methodology, and that's what we've done in Mallop Street, you can actually keep track of what happens to trade when that thing goes in. And we do a lot of work with traders about, they're always, in Collingwood where our office is, they're always worried about losing that car parking space. But that's why testing is a really great idea with them, to see if it does actually, make a difference to their trade or not. So often they're very open to opening up the books and letting that be tracked openly. And we've also found that just letting them hear what their customers say about it, that's a really important part of it. So always speaking and understanding what the perceptions from the community are with these changes that are being made really helps, particularly with traders.
When you're planning the transformation of a public space, you consider the impacts of where potentially that problem or crime could relocate to, because you're getting rid of it in that public space, but then it could potentially transfer somewhere else. Do you consider that?
Yeah, well, absolutely, and that's often something that's brought up right at the beginning, is you don't just want to displace it to somewhere else. And so when we are working in in areas that particularly do have antisocial behaviour, loitering and things like that. Firstly, we always do it closely with the police wherever we can and we're currently doing a lot of work with Sunshine Police to try and understand what those dynamics are. But also we try as much as possible to involve those people that are the source of the problem, or the perceived often source of the problem, into the actual project itself. And we see a lot of, it takes time for that shift to happen, but we see that, and that's why I speak about contact theory, about rather than just saying, but we don't want those people in public spaces, let's put them over there, involving them in some way in the project helps alleviate the problem in so many different ways. And we did that in the St Albans project in Brimbank. There are a lot of street drinkers that sit around that substation, and that was a really big concern for council. We're going to turn this into a public space and invite all the kids down. We've got to move those street drinkers on. It's like, if you move those street drinkers on, that's the point of the project, is about making an inclusive public space so that those perceived issues are sort of watered down in a way, and they were no problem at all, and actually were picking up people's rubbish and chatting to people, and we got feedback that they didn't drink as much that day and they felt really excited about it and things like that. So always trying to include them and explicitly addressing that rather than just letting it accidentally get moved on to somewhere else.
I'm really interested in your whether you've got any kind of tips or hints about engaging the community. You've talked a lot about how that's really at the crux of a successful project, and particularly engaging those people who are probably least likely to want to be involved in a steering committee or some formal governance group. So and you obviously said you've experienced some successes and some things that haven't worked. Are there kind of a top 5 of kind of how to have an inclusive engagement process where you get, particularly vulnerable community members on board and sort of excited? And this is at the heart of it's a different challenge on every project. One thing that we do say with this work is there is no project if there isn't a community leader, because otherwise it's just top down. And we say it's got to be community led, we're all about community led, but even us coming in, we're still someone else that's not the community saying, hey, let's do this project, and it feels top down. So the first step is always mobilise community leadership and finding those people that you wouldn't necessarily, that aren't the ones that come to the council meeting. And those people that come to the council meeting will often want to be the ones that are leading your project, but you've just got to be careful not to let that happen. So the top 5, it's got to be lots of face-to-face time. So we spend a lot of time, we have our volunteers and interns and myself personally, all our team go out and door knock and meet people, and it's not just about the first people you meet, it's about their relationships, their partners, their business managers, all the different kinds of people. So meet as many people as you can face-to-face. Look for the individual leaders. Just because one business might be interested in it, who's the person in that business that actually is going to be promoting it for you? And the other thing is you've got to very quickly step away and not brand it. Often our clients, particularly councils, want to put their logos all over everything and put it in the corporate title block. It just doesn't work when you do that. As much as possible, we let our flyers look like a garage sale pin-up so that people want to come to it. So it's got to be that sort of authentic and locally led. And also thinking about it as a cycle is really important. You start somewhere, quick action, some kind of prototype, and that broadens the participation. So all you need is a few people to start with, 1, 2 or 3 people to start with, and then once you actually get started, more and more people want to be part of it, and that's the way we go about it, to try and make it as authentic as possible. And don't call anything a steering committee, please.
Thank you, Mark James, Crime Prevention Paran. I loved your presentation, it was fantastic.
Thanks, Mark.
I wish some of my bosses had come along so they wouldn't think my ideas were as wacky as they think they are.
Go to our website, we've got heaps of more wacky stuff on there.
Yeah, I used to look after Yarra, so I love what you've done with Lennox Street, because that's always been a challenge. They used to drug deal in the banks on a hot day because it was lovely and cool with the air conditioning and weird things like that. I just wanted to say thanks for the chook lane. I had a lady about 6 months after that started happening in South Yarra complaining about local issues and this, that and the other in this little narrow lane, and I said, how about we get some chickens? And she stopped ringing me, so that was, I found it a really effective way of dealing with something, so it worked well. So thanks for that.
No, not at
and
all.
Lovely presentation.
Thanks very much.